You're kidding. Is it? It is? It's 9 o'clock and it's a Saturday morning. Yes! It's time for the Monster Magic Saturday Show. Let's do this.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning. Feel the sun shining for your eyes.
Woohoo! Hello, everybody. Yes, welcome to the Monster Magic Saturday Show. What on earth happened to autumn? It's gone straight to winter. What's happening with the planet? Who knows? And already people are talking about Christmas, but they're also talking about Black Friday and whether or not Monster Magic will be having a Black Friday sale. I probably will, just not to be a party pooper. So I'll stick some bargains up there on Friday the 29th, I think it is. I'm guessing, I don't know, it's an American thing, and I'm not even sure when Thanksgiving is, but it's the Friday after that. So anyway, further on, let's do some reviews. And first up we have Free Will by Deddy, Cobuzier and Penguin Magic. Free Will Deluxe, I should say. Free Will is a well-known effect. It's been around for donkey's years, and this is in fact a reiteration of an old Elmwood Magic release. Elmwood used to be run by Paul Richards. If you don't know who Paul Richards is, he is an amazing creator. I've got some of his stuff on Monster actually. Penguin bought Elmwood, I believe. So you've got things like What's Yours Is Mine, and wonderful tricks, colour changing decks, prediction cards. He really did make some very good, easy to do commercial magic. Paul Richards, anything with his name on, do check it out and see if it's for you. So he came up with him and Deddy Cobuzier had this Free Will. Originally it was done with these wooden chips rather than these metal chips, which I'll show you in a minute. But first, the effect. Let me explain the effect. You show your participant that you have these 3 metal discs, and on each of them is a different symbol, a triangle, a square, or a star. And they get to choose which chip goes into the bag, which chip they hold onto, and which chip you hold onto. You then read your prediction, and it correctly names who is holding which chip and which chip is in the bag. It is simply a really strong pocket-sized mentalism trick. The actual free will principle and the method and the plot goes back many years. Certainly Mel Stover, I think, had a version of it called 2Qs, I think, back in the 50s. And I think he was the first one that had this sort of 3-place location with a prediction card. That's as far as I know, he was the first. It seems now, once you know the principle, it seems like something that could have been around for much longer. So when this was originally released, the chips were wooden, and so really the upgrade is basically these chips here. Let me show you them. They've got some nice designs on the back. Hang on a sec. Like so. The designs are quite important. They help you with the routine, and they make this nice sound. They're not poker chips. Poker chips would have worked, I guess, but they aren't metal. They make that. I love that chinking sound. I think that really adds to it. The designs are sort of quite arcane. In the tutorial, they're sort of referred to as something you might have found in an old antique shop. For me, they feel like something they could be in one of those sort of tarot, crystal, mystical nonsense shops that you get certainly down Brighton lanes. You'll find something similar to these. The designs do hold a secret. That secret is very easy to see once you know what you're looking for. It's really easy to overlook just how powerful this simple trick is, especially when you know how easy it is to perform. But it's so impossible for a layperson to backtrack. How can you possibly know which chip goes into the bag, which chip they will end up with, and which chip you will end up with? It just seems completely impossible. And they're left with that feeling of, but what if I'd done something differently? And that is a really strong feeling to leave someone with, and they'll just go away shaking their heads. The prediction card is also really nice, again sort of tarot-ish in design for me, with the font and the thing on the back. It's also a good strong card. It'll fit in your wallet and it'll last a while. It will get dog-eared eventually, but maybe that will just add to the trick, who knows. But this obviously lays down the prediction in stone. If you're doing it for friends and family and you want to alter which chip ends up where, you certainly can. You just have to write your own prediction. You know, you can get business cards printed if you want, cheap enough, if you're really super keen. But personally, I would just write it down, maybe on a nice card, something to make it look like it means something when you put it down in front of them to start off with. But yeah, so you can alter it and amend it. So if you're doing it for friends and family, it's not always exactly the same. The tutorial is taught by Nick Lecapo, and he is very thorough. So did I say Nick Lecapo was doing the tutorial? Yes, and he runs through everything in great detail. Really, there's not too much to know. There are just slightly different paths you can go down, but once you know where everything's meant to end up, you don't really have any memory work. It just sort of becomes quite natural. You just know how the trick works, how the principle works. So because you've got that knowledge, you don't have to remember each individual path per se by rote. And what is also really nice is that once you know the principle, as Nick explains, you can do it with almost any three objects in a nice impromptu manner. And he gives some nice ideas, using cutlery at a table, perhaps, all things like that. So it's really quite an in-depth look at the free will trick and principle as a whole, rather than just using these rather nice chips. Finally, at the end, Nick runs through Paul Richards' alternative handling, which is a lot of fun as well. And really, it is just a wonderful look at free will with some great props. And you know, you can really blow people's minds away with just three objects and a written prediction. That is Free Will Deluxe by Deddy Cobuzier, $33.99. Next up, we've got Schrodinger's Envelopes by Mato and TCC. This trick is loosely based on the idea of Schrodinger's cat, where there's a cat in a box and it can either be alive or dead until you open up the box to find out. In this method, no cats are harmed, no animals whatsoever. You spread through a deck of cards and you ask your participant to freely select one. You then put that inside an envelope that's placed aside. You then show you've got 5 other envelopes labelled A to E. They get to freely choose whichever one they like, and you remove the playing card from that envelope. You then remove all of the cards from the other envelopes, showing that they are different. When you remove the card from the Schrodinger's envelope, you will see that it completely matches the card that they've chosen. You then turn over the envelopes to show that that card was predicted all along, as the envelopes have "You will choose the 9 of clubs" written on the back. I think this is a real corker of an effect. I love the idea of Schrodinger's cat. It's a very interesting principle that's easy to grasp and makes you wonder, and it's a nice story to hang a trick on. It's not the first time Schrodinger's cat's been used in a trick as a block basis. Let me show you what you get. You get these envelopes. They're very nicely printed. They're craft envelopes. They're pretty strong. They're not Tyvek, so they will get battered after a while, but if you look after them, in a sense, he suggests that you put these in an elastic band and you carry them all together. And as a group, as long as they're not carrying around them individually, they will survive pretty well. They've all got the nice letters on, and they've all got the words printed on the back as well. And it's pretty much self-working. The method is done a little bit with these envelopes, which is very similar to Alan Shaxton's flap. Shaxton's flap sounds like something you need to go and see the doctor about. But that was from his book, A Kind of Magic, I think it was called, back in 1970. It's slightly different in method, but clearly based on that. TCC don't seem to be able to give any credit or any history to many of their effects, but there you go. And you also get 5 playing cards as well. like here. These are they've got these are gimmicked, and they have got bicycle faces. So as long as you're using any deck that's got a similar face to this, you'll be fine. It doesn't come with a deck of cards, so you do need to have probably a deck printed by the USPCC, and not one with tigers or Harry Potter on it or anything like that. Just an ordinary deck of playing cards which will match these, and it's that combination of envelopes and cards that make the trick completely self-working. You can show the envelopes empty, and in fact the envelopes that are on the table at the end can all be examined. The cards cannot be examined. As I said, they are gimmicked, and I think that's a little bit of a shame. Personally, I think I might have preferred to have the envelopes gimmicked and the cards not gimmicked. I don't know why. For me, it feels like perhaps there might be more heat on the cards than the envelopes, and perhaps it makes more sense to put the envelopes away and even have on the back of the cards, you could have, you will choose the 9 of clubs, then they get turned over, and there's sort of a logical way of displaying that they are in fact ungimmicked that way. Maybe that's just how I would do it, but it is still a really, really strong, really easy to do trick. It's ideal for when you're sitting down with a group of friends around the dinner table, perhaps. It's all right for parlour as well. You can prop these up. The tutorial is just shy of 10 minutes long, but that is all you need. They do run through everything very clearly. There is no forcing involved at all, and they do get to choose any card from the deck that they like, and they can choose any envelope, and it will always match. It will always be the 9 of clubs, which again perhaps is another reason to back up my idea of having the envelopes gaffed and not the cards, and then you would be able to change the value that appears at the end. As is the TCC way, it's really nicely put together and very keenly priced. That is Schrodinger's Envelopes by Mato, TCC, $16.99. Next up, it is Predator Pack by R. Paul Wilson. This trick is, as Paul says, based on his Predator wallet, the trick that came out about 20 years ago, I believe. More recently, people might recognise it as something fairly similar to Richard Saunders' Any Card that came out about 5 years ago. It's quite hard to get hold of now. But, I mean, the idea goes back many years for sure. Paul Harris had something in his Art of Astonishment book 3 called the Anything deck that sort of follows along this plot. But if you go back even further to the 50s, you've got people like Orville Mayer with Predicto Pack and things like that. The effect and presentation that Paul does with it is that you show you've got a deck of cards, and on the box it says the trick with 2 jokers. You then ask your participant to name any card that they like. It is a completely free choice. You then run through the deck and you remove the jokers and the guarantee card. When you turn them over, they say the name of the card the person has just freely chosen. It is really, really strong. It is really, really direct, and it looks really, really clean. The deck is heavily gimmicked, so you can't go on and use the deck, unfortunately, for another trick. You're going to have to dip back into your pocket and swap it out. There is quite a logical way of doing that, really, because you've written on the box and because you've got the jokers. You can just simply put it in your pocket to leave the 3 cards on the table, the jokers on the table, to make a nice clean display of when it's directly correct, and then just come out with another deck of cards afterwards as if it's the same deck. You can spread the cards really, really cleanly. That is one of the things that Paul goes on about with the construction of this deck. Let me get it out for you. And I'll show you exactly what, well, I won't show you exactly what the deck is, because that would be giving the game away. One quirky thing is it comes in a rider back box, but it's actually a maiden back deck. No one's going to notice that. That's absolutely fine. And as you can see, it's very easy to spread through, and you can spread through, and you can show the backs as well. It's all very clean. and it just looks like an ordinary deck of cards. And you can be pretty open, pretty careless with the spread on the table, anything like that. Paul goes into great detail about how secure everything is, that you're not going to end up with a little bit of anything showing or giving the game away. And that casualness and the confidence it gives you is really, really nice. That does mean, however, that it's not as easy to pull out the jokers as in other versions of this trick, or similar versions of this trick maybe. Paul has got a little technique. There's a little bit of extra gaffing going on with these cards. Again, it's completely invisible or fly by anyone's eyes, but that is how the card is sort of chosen, how the joker's taken out. You can do it in the traditional manner, actually. So although Paul says you can't or you shouldn't, you can. So don't worry too much about that. If you can't master sort of Paul's little handling, it's not difficult by any stretch of the imagination. It's almost a self-working trick, really. There is also a small element of maths involved, certainly with the way that Paul sets up the deck. You can set it up differently if you wish, and it's similar in that way to the invisible deck, shall we say, in the fact that that's the level of maths you're going to be doing. But as with the invisible deck, you can set it up so that no maths are required, or you can make the sum something you're very easily able to do. Take away 1, for example, whatever it might be. So you've got a freedom of choice there, and it is, to be honest, now I've mentioned the invisible deck, the effect is quite similar to the invisible deck. If you do the invisible deck already, that's a very, very strong trick, with this has got no real advantages, and it's not as if this deck's examinable in any way or anything like that. Slightly different hook, slightly different plot, but essentially the trick of having a card predicted already ahead of time, being pulled out of a deck of cards, is what's going on here. You don't need to use the guarantee card. You don't need to do that of in the middle. Paul clearly does. I wouldn't, because you've just set it up as the trick with 2 jokers. So for me, it doesn't make any sense to pull out the 3rd one, so I wouldn't. Because this trick is the premise that you remove the 2 jokers before playing with a deck of cards, it makes sense that you then go on to use this deck of cards for a card trick later, if you see what I mean. The idea is you just remove the jokers, that's what we do before playing the card, and then we move on. So it's really more of an opener. You do have to put this away, you do have to switch it out, but I would switch it out with the idea of just putting the box and the cards away for the clear revelation, and then bring them back out. The deck is really, really well made, and it comes already with all of the values on and everything like that, so you are good to go straight out of the box. It is a really, really strong opening card effect. It's very, very direct, and I do like the 2 plates of I do like the 2 jokers hook. Paul's tutorial is excellent. He covers everything, even though it's virtually self-working. He goes into great detail about exactly how to do everything and why he does things how he does them. You might choose to do them in a different way, but he justifies what he does very clearly. As with all tricks of this nature, the only real downside is the deck can't be examined, and it is a 1 deck that you've got to carry around just for this one effect. But it is a really, really strong effect. That is the Predator Pack by R. Paul Wilson, 30.99. And now it's a little competition time, because obviously I have opened this Predator Pack just to fan it around, just to see how good it is, and just to play with it. So yeah, it's a giveaway now. All you have to do is, the one thing I don't particularly like about this is the name Predator Pack. It doesn't really say what it does. So I think we should have a competition where if you put something in the comments of things that should be renamed, it doesn't have to be magic tricks. It can be magic tricks. It could be triumph, could be topsy-turvy, righty-righty, something along those lines, or it could be anything in your house or anything in the world. Butter could be renamed bread moisturizer, for example. So you can either rename the Predator pack if you want. Things that should be renamed, just pop them down in the comments and I will patiently write them all out, put them on slips of paper, put them into my saucepan and draw out the winner next week. And finally, it is Swiss Key by Nicholas Lawrence and Hanson Chien. This is another key effect, another everyday carry that goes on your key ring. If you haven't had a chance to check out Chris Rawlins' Hider key, he's got the new one out with the different coloured key. Do check that out. I saw him at the London Magic Convention, which is a brilliant magic convention as well. Highly recommend that. Check that out as an everyday carry. This is a different kettle of fish entirely. What you have here is a key that you can take a borrowed banknote or a piece of paper, anything like that. Take this key and you can push it through the banknote, rip it out. You can have it melt through the banknote. It is really quite versatile, and that's why it's called the Swiss key, because it is the Swiss Army knife of key effects. Usually that means that it does nothing particularly well. Like a Swiss Army knife, you know, it's not the greatest corkscrew in the world. It's not the best pair of scissors, but it's all on there. This is really good for that bill penetration, for the going through the banknote. It is perfect. You get taught by Nicholas Lawrence, and he runs through several different ways of doing it, including one with the polymer note. Now, you can do all of the options with the polymer note. You can do the stabbing through if you wish, and everything like that, all exactly the same. But as he points out, you can't really stab through a polymer note. In a way, that doesn't quite make sense, or it makes it very hard to sort of justify that that's what you're doing with a paper note. The idea of ripping it and putting a hole in it is much more logical. So the version 3 on the tutorial, there's sort of 3 or 4 different versions of getting it through the banknote. The first few are stabbing. The version 3, where it melts through the sort of V shape of the banknote, is brilliant. It is my favourite one, I think, to be honest. It's the most visual, it's nice and slow, and it just looks like real magic. And that, for me, is the effect that I would be doing with this key. There are other things on it. There's static key, which is quite good fun, where the banknote sticks to the key. There's like an impossible balance trick on there as well, which again visually is really nice, and it's a lot of fun to play with. These are all sort of added extras that you might just want to enjoy learning, and perhaps just sort of showing someone as an aside. Again, this is on your keyring, don't forget. It's an everyday carry, so you can choose what you want, whether you want to do a longer performance or a shorter one. Some of these extra tricks might be more appropriate. And Angelo Carbone does a nice one as well, with a zigzag key across your fingers. I say it's Angelo's idea. Nicholas Lawrence teaches it. What you actually receive in this box, if I can cover up, what you actually receive in this box are 2 keys. So this key is completely ungimmicked. This is the key ring. You might remember a similar key ring in that Hanson Chien's other key effect, Scotch and Whiskey, which is here. It opens up nicely, and it'll keep the keys safe. So just use this key ring. It's just easy to get them off. You don't want one of those curly ones, because then you're just running the gimmick through those 2 pieces of metal. You're just damaging your very expensive prop, basically. And then you have the actual gimmicked key. This is the gimmick. And to be honest, unless you know it's gimmicked in some way, you're going to struggle to find out how. Only through my knowledge, really, of coin tricks, did I, and that I knew it was gimmicked, obviously, and I knew roughly what it was going to be, could I find where it was gimmicked? And that is great, because what I would do with this, and as Nicholas points out as well, is because you've got to fold the banknote, especially with a Tyvek banknote, it's quite difficult to get the crease, and you can give them the key, they can hold the key, I wouldn't say examine the key, I just say just hold the key for a second, whilst you put the creases into the banknote, and then you can take the key back, and that way they feel like they've examined it. I mean, to be honest, they can. There's very little there. Look at that. It is a wonderful made gimmick. It's absolutely genius. And even when the gimmick is sort of in use as it was, you know, you can still probably almost flash this key. It is very well made. Absolute genius. The tutorial is just shy of an hour long, it's like 50 odd minutes, and it is just Nicholas in his apartment, I'm guessing, running through all of the routines. So there's no live performances, and although he's very clear, the teaching, he's very steady, it takes you step by step, he goes through absolutely everything. It's not hard to do, it's just one of those things, you know, unless you haven't had this gimmick before, so you've just got to practice how it works. There are plenty of angles and close-up shots, and Nicholas really does talk about how to show things and everything. What the downside is, because without any live performances, and because he's keeping the key and the bill and everything in shot within frame, you sort of miss the big emotion that would really be going on usually. The big emotion often hides the small emotion, but it also just makes more sense. It sort of gives you an idea of the motivation of why you're bringing it up to display it, and so on. So just bear that in mind when you're watching the tutorial. I think Nick might mention it, but other than that, the tutorial is superb. It is very versatile. The ideas that Nicholas run through, other than the penetration, are brilliant. But because this is going to be on your keyring, you feel free to just practice with other things around it, and you might come up with your own effects. And what's really nice is that it will be on your keyring. It is expensive, but unless you're in the habit of losing your door keys, you will keep it very safe. The craftsmanship is amazing. It is versatile. You can do lots of varied effects with it. It is a wonderful everyday carry, which you can do some impromptu miracles with. That is the Swiss Key by Nicholas Lawrence, $99.99.
I think I ought to see a doctor. Oh, why do you say that? I'm beginning to like the show.
And that's it for this week's show, I'm afraid. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you don't already. Please enter the competition, because I will spend the next 5 days making sure, reading all of the comments and getting excited with every single one. But between now and next week, come on, grab some magic, go out there and have some fun with the best hobby in the world. Bye bye.